And then the meetings do get recorded and they will be posted on our YouTube channel. So I know we have like 2 new people. This is their first meeting. If this is your first meeting, make sure to go to your YouTube channel to review all the other past meetings. So alternative membership requirements. Now, if you're unable to attend meetings due to conflicting schedules for school or work, we do work with you. So make sure you send me an email or a direct message with a proof of the conflicting schedule so we can get that approved for you. If you get your schedule by week, then you can still apply. Just reach out to me and we'll discuss that later on. But the only difference for alternative membership is the dues are a little higher. Again, if you're having financial difficulties, please reach out to me. I am willing to work with you. And then for volunteer credits, it's 5 more credits that we require. Events are the same. Events are on Thursdays. If you aren't able to attend events, also send me a message and we'll figure something out. Okay, so volunteer opportunities, we have a whole video that's specifically for volunteering. So you can also watch that in our YouTube channel. I'm not going to go over it a lot. How do I, nope. But we do encouragement letters for the elderly. This one isn't done as much, so please, if you have time, it doesn't have to be, we don't have a requirement of how long it has to be, you know, just something nice that we can send to the elderly. And then we also have one for the children's shelter and the San Antonio State Hospital. For the Roadrunner Pantry, just donate 6 items. 7 Cups is an app, so you chat with people that are struggling. Okay, and so these are the other opportunities, and here are the addresses where you will send the letters to. Now, if you go to our group chat, I sent pictures of how the letters should be. When you mail them, you can refer to all of that through our gallery. Okay, so just more detail on all of this. Again, this will be uploaded on our YouTube, so if you want to go in detail through the slides, you can do that. We also send the PowerPoint through email, so make sure you subscribe to our router link. Okay, so there's that. Okay, and then here's detail on how to request volunteer credits. And again, so detail. I know a lot of people struggle with this. So if I continue to get more questions, what I'll do is I'll set a time for a meeting, and I'll just have it open for a few hours, and then people can hop in to ask me those questions. Okay, so meeting dates. We had our first meeting on the 2nd of February. Our second meeting was canceled, postponed because of the snowstorm. We are going to try and get this done for you as well if we do have an opportunity, an opening. And then we had our clinical psych versus our research psych 2 weeks ago. And so today we have Michael Russo. He's a former president, and he will talk about his experience, and it's going to be an open discussion. So if y'all have questions, please make sure to ask him so he can answer everything for y'all. Then we have professional development. We're gonna have Sarah Good come and talk to us about how to mute people. There you go. Okay. And then we have job searching during COVID. She'll return and discuss that. Now, membership dues are due on the 30th, and then we also have officer applications opening, and then officer applications will be closing on the 13th, and requirements are due that date. Again, I will work with you. If you have issues, just make sure you contact me. Okay. Now, these are our events. So again, we had to cancel this one because of the snowstorm, but we do want to get this done for you. I know that this was a highly asked topic, so we're going to try and figure out when we can do this. and we will let y'all know ahead of time. So again, this is next week. We have our research internship networking. Elena, do you want to quickly talk about it? Okay.
Yeah, I can talk about it if you'd like. Right, so for this panel that we're having next week on Thursday at 6, we've invited 3 different panelists from UTSA to talk about their labs, what they do in their labs, how to start research assistantships, and things like that. So it's a really good event for people who want to get involved with research on campus but aren't sure how to start. I know that for me, that was a huge struggle for some time. Like I didn't know who to reach out to or how to get involved in a lab. So I think that this is a good opportunity for people interested in that.
Okay. And then we have social. So we had 2 already, and then we have our movie night. So what I was thinking was I'm going to send out a poll to y'all so y'all can let me know if y'all want to keep the movie night or replace it with the event. If y'all do want to keep it, then I'll try to find another date for the event. So we do have merch. I'm not going to go into detail with this, but this is the merch. Yep. Oh, let me, how do I, okay. So these are the Venmo and Cash App. This is where you would send dues to. And you can also find it on our gallery in our group chat. Everything that I'm covering here, we have pictures of in our gallery. So make sure that you also refer to that. Okay, and these are the open positions. We have director, secretary, public relations 2, volunteer coordinator 2, and advertising chair. I will send out more detail about these positions later on. And if you do want to start asking me questions, this is my email. Go ahead and send me an email or DM. Okay, so this is our social media. Very, very important for you to be part of it. If you don't have an Instagram or a Twitter or a Facebook, that's fine. Like, you know, these aren't as important. Rowdy Link and YouTube are though, in our group chat on GroupMe. This is our QR code if you haven't already accessed it. Now, I do have to approve, and then I believe it'll ask you like a question before you try to join. So just make sure you answer the question and then look at the gallery because we do have some rules for that. We do have 2 other group chats available for recommendations and then one for any kind of socialization. Okay, we have our next meeting on March 30th, and it's going to be professional development. And then we have our event next week. We will send out the QR code. It is a different QR code, so we will share it either a day or 2 beforehand. Okay, so Michael, if you want to present yourself, and then the floor is yours.
Cool, sounds good. Thank you all so much for having me. It's really great to be back. I was as was mentioned, I was a previous president for what was called Student Psychology Club back in those days in 2014. Now I understand it's Student Psychological Association. Did I get that right? Okay. Yeah, so I was a president back then. Also, I served as an officer for Psychi as well. I was the treasurer through there as well. And I think, you know, in my time, at least, one of the things that I really recall and really appreciated a lot, and it really helped me out a lot through graduate school applications, doctoral program applications, just, you know, in general in life too, as a counselor, was some of the opportunities that are being presented. Like Debbie was mentioning the you know, volunteering at San Antonio State Hospital. That was something that we started back whenever I was president, and I'm so happy to hear that it's continuing, because it's one thing to read about something in a textbook, and it's another thing to actually do it. It's another thing to live it. And whenever you're actually going through applications, if you're applying for jobs, if you're applying for graduate school, you have those experiences that you can kind of fall back on. And so I think that that was at least something that I appreciated whenever I was president was, that I'm going to call it student psych club just because it's an old habit. I apologize, but that was one of the big strengths that I saw within the organization. Was that they might feel like an encouragement for volunteer hours, but those volunteer hours will really pay off in the future. Now, that whole kind of piece aside, let me just kind of tell you all a little bit about myself. I actually received my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, not in psychology, but that was also from UTSA as well. And so the Clinical Mental Health Counseling program at UTSA is a phenomenal program. Just to kind of put it in perspective a little bit, they have the American Counseling Association, which is similar to like the American Psychological Association. They're both big professional organizations within the professions. And you actually have two past presidents at UTSA. A lot of people don't realize that, but Heather Trepaul, she was a past president of the American Counseling Association, as well as Thelma Duffy. You also have some awesome people over there like Jerry Junkie as well. He was one of my mentors whenever I was going through the program. And it's just such a genuine, caring, fantastic human being. So you've got a lot of really awesome people there in the program, right in your own backyard. And I think it often gets overlooked when people are looking at graduate schools and everything, because we get our bachelor's in psychology or whatever other area that y'all are going for. I got my bachelor's in psychology from UTSA as well as my master's. I'm actually currently at the University of Mississippi. I'm finishing up. This is my final semester in the PhD in Counselor Education and Supervision program. And so I ended up graduating from UTSA and going to the University of Mississippi. I also actually, as of this past week, just accepted a faculty position with Boise State University. So I'll be up there at Boise State this coming up semester, this coming August. So I share that to kind of give y'all a little bit of background about me as far as like the professional side. In addition to that, I'm currently a provisionally licensed professional counselor in the state of Mississippi. And so I'm knocking out hours to get my full licensed professional counselor certification. In terms of my actual clinical experience, a lot of that really did start back with Student Psych Club, Student Psychology Association. Again, I'm going to screw it up all night, y'all. I apologize. I'm going to work on it though. But some of that clinical experience really did start with the organization. And because of that, I've got nearly 10 years of worth of clinical experience in a variety of settings. I've worked psychiatric inpatient, I've worked nonprofit, private practice settings. I've also worked for state-run facilities for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've also done school-based counseling. That's not a school counselor, but what that means is that I went into one of the school settings. I was invited into one of the school settings, and I'd provide counseling services to those students there. So that's just a little bit of background about my actual like working experience. I've also worked at a college counseling center as well here at the University of Mississippi. So I just share that with y'all to where if y'all have any questions about where do I go, how do I apply for graduate programs, why did I choose personally counseling over psychology? Not to say that either one is bad or over social work for that matter. I just found a different path. I'm happy to answer a little bit about that too. Really, I want to make this about y'all's experience. So if you do have questions, please feel free to let me know. Because I can sit up here and talk all night long. And believe me, as a new professor, I can definitely talk. But I want this to be about y'all. So are there any questions so far about anything really?
So with your master's, you were able to become a counselor?
Yes. Yeah. So I got my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And one of the things that's different between psychology and counseling is that the counseling profession actually licenses individuals at the master's level. That's the norm within counseling. Whereas a lot of the clinical psychology or other psychology areas, if you're pursuing licensure, you have to have your doctoral degree. And so that is one of the areas that you get a lot of training, especially at UTSA, about, how to become a counselor, how to sit with someone, what theories are you using whenever you're responding? Because there's a lot of different theories out there about how people change and how people grow, and how people overcome a variety of situations and experiences. Even you get a lot of stuff, and if you don't want to sit face to face from someone too, there's also career counseling where you're able to provide support for individuals or groups of individuals who are looking to pursue advances within their own career. You can also do there's a lot of different areas, and it's not just strictly focused on the one face to face across from someone. There's a lot of different avenues that a lot of people don't realize about counseling. So as y'all are probably getting a taste, I can talk a lot. So if y'all just have a simple question, I'll probably share a little bit more.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this person wasn't able to make it today, but he had a question for me, and I was like, I don't know the question to this, the answer to this. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Okay. She's trying to give me a cookie. Okay. Sorry. But they were asking if the psychology. Cece, can you stop? Yes, you can have it. Yes. Oh, she was wanting the cookie. Sorry, I'm so sorry. No, but they were asking about the psychology program, and I don't know if you would know since you did counseling, or if you knew someone that knew. They were wondering like what the workload for the psychology program is like.
Now, I can't speak about the actual workload per se, but I have worked with school psychologists in the past. And one of the things that, kind of differ between our types of training is that they received a lot of training around assessment. So how to, score, interpret testing assessments, and ultimately, what does that mean for the child and their particular set of circumstances, whatever, needs that they have. A lot of those assessments are geared towards providing accommodations for those. Also helping to clarify diagnoses, things along those lines too. School counselors and school psychologists both are oftentimes some of the front lines when working in the school setting. And so they're often able to help provide different resources if the individual needs ongoing therapy. Or if they are just looking for different types of accommodations, school counselors and school psychologists are both able to provide information about that. Unfortunately, I don't know the specifics about the programs, but that's my understanding is that generally psychology tends to be more assessment driven. And counseling in general tends to be more wellness focused. So it's looking at the person as a whole, and seeing like what does their social circumstances look like, how do they have interactions with a lot of other people, do they have are they taking care of themselves emotionally, physically, things along those lines. It's all wellness focused as opposed to being very driven by a lot of the assessments. Now, I will say that many of the psychology programs too are changing in some aspects for that. But if you go to some traditional psychology programs, there tends to be more of a emphasis within those areas. I hope that helped for that person. I see also in the chat too, Barbara was asking about wanting to get into counseling, but for a school district, any guidance towards that? So actually kind of similar to what I was just talking about a little bit as far as, oftentimes counseling programs will have school counseling tracks and then clinical mental health counseling tracks or addictions counseling tracks. For example, Boise State University, they have both a school counseling track as well as an addiction counseling track. And one of the things that you'll hear if you're interested in counseling, is the term CACREP. That's, I'll type it in the chat. CACREP is C-A-C-R-E-P. That stands for the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Education Programs. If you're looking at counseling programs, I would highly, highly, highly recommend going to one that is accredited by CACREP. And the reason why is because CACREP is the national accrediting body. They take the state standards and usually do a step above that. And so what that means is that whenever you go to apply for your licensure, You know, some states, if you say, for example, you don't want to stay in Texas for your whole life, you want to get out and travel a little bit or go someplace else, you have an easier time with that transition from one state to another for your license if you come from a KCREP program. Additionally, one of the certifications that I have is a nationally certified counselor, the NCC. That certification now is only awarded to individuals who pass their counseling exam after coming from a KCREP accredited program. That's a new standard that they've actually just you know, it started to implement. And so if you are going to go to a counseling program, make sure that they're KCREP accredited. I'll share that Boise State is KCREP accredited, University of Mississippi is, UTSA is also KCREP accredited for their master's program. And I see another question about, do I think that bachelor's degree would be enough, or would it be a higher degree? As far as if you're looking to actually provide mental health services, you're going to need a higher degree. That is, I believe there are some stipulations within social work that allow you to do that, but oftentimes the social work programs are more focused around wraparound care. So how can I connect this individual with different resources? Now, there's exceptions to that, like the licensed clinical social worker. And that, I believe, requires a master's degree as well. But that's one that you can also practice independently with, just like you can with an LPC, a licensed professional counselor, or if you are a board certified psychologist, an ABPP, which is often wrapped into a PhD. They don't often write ABPP, but Dr. McNaughton Castle is a great resource. She's a clinical psychologist and a fantastic person. If y'all haven't had a chance to talk to her, knock on her door. Well, I guess you can't knock on her door now because of COVID. Send her an email, reach out to her. She's awesome. So yeah, Elena, you were asking about the LCSW, the licensed clinical social worker. My understanding, and I'm not a social worker, this is just my understanding, is that it does require a master's in social work and MSW.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was saying, yeah, I can confirm that it does need one. Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to do. No, you're good.
Okay. Cool. Great questions, y'all. Great questions. And y'all feel free to ask, even the heavy questions, we can talk about finances in master's programs too. That's something that was a big concern for me personally. We can talk about, how to get into, either doctoral programs, master's programs, whatever y'all are looking for. Feel free to ask the heavy hitting questions too. Application process, sure. So, each program is going to be a little bit different in what they require. But in general, something I actually learned, I don't know if Dr. Stella Lopez still teaches in the psych program, but she was someone who really taught me whenever I took her social psychology course about the BLIS model, BLIS. And what that refers to whenever looking at personality is behavior. How is the person acting? What is someone physically doing, or how can you tell based on maybe an interview? Who the person is. Life, these are going to be things like your resume, your CV, your actual lived experiences that you're showcasing as it relates to an area. Investigative, so this would be, what does someone else say about you? So for example, whenever you're applying, they might ask for letters of reference. This is an opportunity for someone else to share about you. And then self, this is what you say about you. And so where that comes in would be interviews, if a program has interviews. And those are usually the common areas that many graduate schools and doctoral programs require. Some will also require the GRE, or if you're going into medicine, the MCAT or law, the LSAT, whatever those other exams are. Now, not every program requires those. I'll say from personal experience, at the doctoral level, a lot of them do require the GRE, but for masters, they don't, for many different programs. Some of them will, but I hear you, the GRE scared the heck out of me. That was something that I ended up taking multiple times and had a hard time with it. So I share that because, I hear the fear factor behind taking another exam that many of y'all might be experiencing. And it's an exam. Remember, it's only one part of the application process. I will say too that some of the programs I even applied for my doctoral program, would not even look at your application unless you have a certain GRE, as well as GPA. So, you know, asking about applications, see, I'm getting a few questions. Let me actually just finish up with this thought real quick, and then I'll hit the chat for a second. But you know, in general, you're looking at, you know, your personal statement whenever applying for graduate school. You're looking at letters of recommendation for some programs. You're looking at your resume or CV, which your CV, by the way, is just a very long resume. It details like everything about it. And the career services at UTSA can also be a really great support if you're looking at graduate school, if you're looking at applying for jobs and want to make a CV, they can really help you out with that. You know, your letters of recommendation, and then interviews. So one program in particular I'll share a little bit about, just because, like I said, I'm joining faculty there, is Boise State. So that program, they do require letters of recommendation. They require a statement. They do not require a GRE, but they do require interviews as well. So the interview is just more of a, hey, get to know you, you get to know the program. And some people look at interviews as a scary one-sided process, like, oh, they're judging me to see if I'm going to be okay for this program. Remember that you're also interviewing them. So you want to get a sense on, do I feel like I really have a connection here? Does this person really care about me? Am I in a place where I actually enjoy? These are things that you get to interview as well, not just the other side of it. See, I'm getting a few questions in here. So kind of trying to take it from the top. Did that answer, Crystal, your question about the application process, or was there a little bit more that you were wondering about?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. If something comes up, feel free. We can go there too. So Barbara's asking about the financials. So one thing, one downside that I did experience through my master's program is that I did have to work full time pretty much in order to pay for graduate school for me. It was a little expensive, but it was doable too. And with that, again, I was gaining real world experience. I actually worked at Laurel Ridge Treatment Center in San Antonio while I was going through graduate school. I worked as a mental health technician over there. And so, you know, that's one way where you can work in a similar area as what you're studying and also get paid for that. There are some programs like the University of Mississippi, their master's programs, both in school counseling and clinical mental health counseling. There are opportunities to pursue graduate assistantships, which part of those means that usually you get at least half-time stipend, which means that half of your tuition is covered. At the very least, some of them even have the full tuition that's covered, and they also pay you as well. With Boise State University, the same thing. They will actually pay you to go to school if you apply for some of these graduate assistantship positions. That also includes out-of-state tuition too. I'll say whenever I moved from San Antonio to Oxford, Mississippi, if I had to pay out of pocket, it was expensive. It was very expensive, but I applied for graduate assistantships, and that actually covered the cost. And up until this point, I'm getting ready to graduate, like I said, this semester. I didn't accrue any debt, any student loans whenever I actually applied for and went through the PhD. So that is something to really consider whenever you're looking at programs. The actual dollar amount of how much they pay for the stipend does vary by university. And another thing too is I talk about outside of Texas universities for that intentionally, because of the fact that not many, at least within counseling programs, have that opportunity to be able to pay you to go to school like other states do. From what I understand is that it's actually a law within Texas that they can't do that. And so that is something that is frustrating, but it can be done too. You can, make your way and also grow as a counselor, as a mental health professional, as you're doing it too. Barbara, did that kind of answer some of your questions, or do you have any more like specific questions about that? Okay. Okay, cool. Another thing I'll do whenever I finish up with the presentation today is I'll share my information with y'all. So if y'all have any lingering questions, you finish up with the meeting today and you're like, there's some other things that I was just mulling over and that gave me more questions or more things I was curious about, I'm happy to keep talking with y'all. So let me know whatever y'all need. I'm here as well. Megan was asking when we should start taking the GRE. So I think it really depends on your program. If you're interested in counseling programs and the program, the particular school that you have your heart set on requires the GRE, I think if you have the financial ability to do so, start taking it earlier than later. The GRE usually lasts for about 5 years. So that means that if you start right now, if you're day one in your bachelor's program at UTSA, you can still take your GRE and it will still last whenever you're applying for graduate programs. Now, if you're interested in doctoral programs, that's where it gets a little bit dicey because some people fall into it where I finish up my master's, I decided, I want to go out and into the profession, start working, start seeing people, start helping people out. And then maybe I want to go back, a couple of years later after I get my license or something. That's something that's very common. I've got a few friends who I went actually through the bachelor's program at UTSA, master's program with, and did that very thing. It gets a little bit difficult whenever you try to apply if you want to go on for a PhD, which again is not required because they license at the master's level for counseling. But it might end up in a situation where you need to retake the GRE. Did that kind of answer your question, Megan? Cool. All right. I'm reading this next one. So did I always want to pursue my PhD? So for me personally, actually, I didn't think I was going to go on for my PhD. But the reason why I decided to is because while I was in my master's program, I was teaching or helping to serve as a teaching assistant for the neurofeedback program. And as Dr. MC can attest to, I am very much all about neurofeedback, neuroscience, all of that. In fact, I think Debbie could even talk about that a little bit because I was even asking her if she wanted me to do a neurofeedback talk. But anyways, that I'm a big neuro nerd. And so I was in here and I was helping to support some of these other master students learn about what is neurofeedback, how is it these squiggly waves on an EEG promote change and all of that within a person's life. And so I kind of stepped into a teaching role because I had actually had an internship with someone who's in San Antonio, Alan Novian. I don't know if anyone has heard of him or anything, but he's actually the professor at St. Mary's who teaches the neurofeedback program now. And he also has a private practice in San Antonio. But he's a really, really fantastic person. And so I actually learned about neurofeedback while I was in my bachelor's program. And so that I had a little bit more experience. I share that because I have more experience in figuring out, well, what is neurofeedback? How does it work? All of that. And so I was teaching in the program. And one of the things that I noticed whenever I was kind of facilitating a class discussion one day was that, people started to get it. They had the aha or the light bulb moment where things just click and it makes sense. I don't know if any of y'all have ever had that in any of the classes that y'all have, but where you're just kind of sitting there, you're listening and you're like, huh, okay, that makes sense. That aha moment, I saw it in the students and I heard it from some of the students that I was working with. And that was kind of like getting bit by the bug, so to speak. That was the teaching bug for me because there was no other feeling that I've ever had up until that point in my life where something that I was sharing, something we were talking about made sense for somebody else. And that sense making process allowed them to be a better service to the clients that they were seeing. And for me, that was kind of like the full circle experience, being able to see that change, that growth happen, and then having that impact another person's well-being, a client's well-being that they're going to see in the future. That was like awesome. That was a gold moment for me. And it was in that experience that I was like, I actually do want to go on and teach. And so I started talking with some of the faculty members in the master's program, and they really supported and encouraged me to continue on. And that's how I ended up making my way out to Mississippi was because some of my mentors there were really supportive and had friends that were teaching at the University of Mississippi. And that's something I learned too about not just PhD programs, but also about education in general and jobs, even for that matter. It's not, that it's important what you know, but it's also important on who you know too. And so having those connections and having those people that are really in your corner and aren't going to steer you wrong is gold. For me, in my undergrad, Dr. MC was that person for me. She's the one who encouraged me to even apply for a graduate program, because at the time I was thinking, ooh, that's scary. I was initially thinking of clinical psychology programs, and I'd hear all the scary statistics about those, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm qualified to go on to graduate school. But having those people in your corner, like Dr. MC, that's what kind of solidified it for me that, okay, she says I can do it. She's done this once or twice before. I'm going to go ahead and try. At the very least, I can tell you, see, I just can't do it. I'm not that good. But here I am today. I think that she saw something in me that I didn't see in me at that time. And so I'll get off my soapbox about Dr. MC, but she's the best. Let's see. So I guess kind of another thing that it sounds like is being asked, Teresa, that I'm not sure if you are asking it or not, but when thinking about doctoral programs, especially within counseling, like I said, you can get masters at you can get licensed at the master's level. And one of the downsides about counseling I will share is that even if you get a PhD, if you are receiving insurance reimbursement from clients, you don't get paid more by insurance because you have a PhD within counseling. Since they license at the master's level, they also pay at the master's level too. It's not bad money, but if you're looking at the pay differential between clinical psychologists and counselors, there is a pay differential when you're talking insurance reimbursement and things along those lines. Psychologists do get paid more at this point in time. I also will say too that that's something that many people within the counseling profession, in fact, professional counseling organizations are fighting against, because of the fact that if you have higher degree, that should be similar pay between the professions. But that, can also be a social justice issue as well that we could be fighting too. But anywho, did that kind of answer your question a little bit, Teresa? Cool. All right. So it looks like, trying to write out all this information about state campuses. So the good thing is you don't necessarily have to write out every specific thing. If you're interested in programs, they have all of this stuff spilled out for you on their websites. So if you're curious about programs, if you go to their particular website, you can read a little bit more about what they require, about who the faculty are, all sorts of different questions about it. You can go there. I also shared too about getting to know the faculty, because that can be something that can really be helpful too. Like I was talking a little bit about before, if you build a contact, you build a relationship with one of the faculty members, that can definitely help you out, whenever you're applying for programs. And the reason why I share that, or what I mean by that, is that whenever the department gets hit with a stack of applications, and one of the faculty members, one of the professors was like, oh, I had this great conversation with Debbie, or I heard this great conversation with Elena, and she was really interested in our particular program. Did they apply for this? They might be able to pull your application out and take an actual individualized look at the application. That does happen within programs, no matter what you choose. And so if you take the time to reach out to a professor, if you look over, what they've done, what they teach, things like that, you can always ask questions about that. And I don't know if y'all are getting the sense or not, but professors love talking. So they'll be happy to talk to you oftentimes. And if they don't, they might just be a jerk. So don't spend your time with them. There's plenty of programs out there. So difference between mental health counseling and regular counseling programs. So part of it is that K-CREP piece that I was talking about. So the Council for the Accreditation of Counseling and Related Education Programs, they have a lot of their programs are considered clinical mental health counseling programs. And that's part of the fact that their language transitioned over. In fact, it transitioned over while I was pursuing my master's degree. At the time, UTSA offered a degree in community counseling, and that was the name for counseling programs back then. And part of the reason why they made the change is because of advocacy efforts. And what I mean is that TRICARE insurance requires that you have a clinical degree that's 60 hours at least. And at the time, community counseling programs were 48 hours, and they didn't have the clinical term within their degree. So KCREP changed the name for the degrees to have the term clinical in it, which means that now individuals can pursue insurance reimbursement opportunities with TRICARE. You can get on their boards for that. So that helped out counselors in terms of providing services to military members or veterans, which everyone needs mental health, and we have all heard horror stories, I'm sure, about the VA. I'm sure that I know they do a lot of great things, but they're very overworked too. And so part of it was addressing a need that's already there. So that was part of the reason for that change. Now, there are some programs that might be CAPREP accredited, but might not have the term clinical within them. Those are still very good programs. Like, for example, the one of them that I was talking about earlier at Boise State, their addictions program. That one is a great program. It's a great degree. It's also 60 hours, and it's also CAPREP accredited. And so that's something that can be helpful for you if you're pursuing those areas. I hope that answered your question, Alejandro. Or Alejandra, I'm sorry, Alejandra. So, Barbara, any pointers to getting through the program? So what's important, what's not really necessary? One of the things that I found really helpful in my experience was building friendships. You're sitting across from people in class, and whether you're at the master's level, whether you're at your undergraduate level, whether you're at the doctoral level. Talking to people around you, talking to people who also share a similar interest to you, and also, get to know people for who they are too. I think that that can be a great experience. That's something that really helped me. In my master's experience at UTSA, they don't have what's called a cohort model at this point in time. They accept a large number of people in each semester. At times, they accept 50 people into their program each semester. So it's a huge program. But one of the things that I've shared with them is that it's hard to actually build the relationship with people. It's hard to get to know your classmates because there's so many people. I mean, I would literally be in program or in coursework, getting ready to graduate and seeing people I'd never seen before. That's the way that I felt during my undergrad program as well. So it made it difficult to build relationships with people. And one of the things that I really found helpful again was joining the organization, because you get to see people that you might not otherwise see because the program is so big, and there's so many other passing times where you're passing people by and all of that. There are some programs too that do have a cohort model. University of Mississippi has a cohort model both for their master's and doctoral level, where they only select a few people in to their program, and you go through all of the coursework alongside with those people. You graduate at the same time with them. You really keep each other accountable, keep each other sane, because it's stressful. I mean, any program that you decide to go for, I'd argue no matter what it is going to have its own unique stresses. Whether that's financial stress, whether that's just like, oh my gosh, there's so many papers to write stress, or no matter what it is, even the stress of I'm getting ready to sit across from my first counseling client, and that's scary. They're coming to me to figure out how to help themselves, and that can be a scary experience. So even having people that you can talk to, not about specific details about the client because that's unethical, illegal, all of that, but what you can do is talk about your own experiences. how you've noticed that, whenever you're in the room with that person, how you start breathing a little bit heavier. You kind of get a little bit scared because it's like, ooh, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. How do I respond to this? Those are all stressors that many of y'all will experience if you want to go into a graduate program, specifically within mental health. So I think, having a community is a really big thing. Another thing too, I think that is also important is making sure that you actually like the environment that you're in. I'm not talking about just like, I'm not just like the university, but also the surrounding area. If you like being able to go to Whataburger, HEB, things like that, probably want to stick in Texas for those because they don't have those many places outside of Texas. Although I say that, but we did find a Whataburger in Alabama. So my wife and I will drive over to Alabama every once in a while to hit up a Whataburger. It's the thing. So yeah, really liking the experience, your environment that you're in. Also another thing that I'm really excited about too in Boise is all the natural beauty that's around. The mountains, you can go skiing, there's rivers, you can go fishing. People will literally be in the middle of Boise, from what I understand, doing some fly fishing, catching salmon, just like all sorts of cool stuff like that, going canoeing on the rivers, all sorts of stuff that, I'm really excited about if you can't tell. I think that part of the environment, part of your experience is your environment. So you want to be in a place where you really enjoy it too, not just for the degree, but also the physical space. Those are things that I found helpful. But ultimately, I'll say too, another piece is that you know yourself best. And so if there's something that is helpful for you right now in your program, as you're going through, as you're taking, very difficult midterm exams, final exams, working on papers for classes, working on assessments, making websites, whatever y'all are doing, what's helpful for you? If it's helpful to be able to take some quiet time and just be by yourself, that's going to be a resource and it's going to be vital for you as you go on for jobs or future programs too. Making sure that you know yourself and you play to your own strengths. I think that is probably the single most important thing about making through programs. I hope that's helpful, Barbara. Sorry, y'all, I'm doing a lot of talking, so I got to keep hydrated too. Go into detail about the LPC program if you know specific info on the UTSA program. Yeah, so I don't know exactly like what specific are you asking about the coursework requirements, or I don't know if you're asking about like who's a good person to get in contact with if you're interested in the program. I guess I'll kind of hit on both.
Yeah,
So,
kind of just basic information. Sorry. Just basic information because I'm still trying to decide which route I want to take. And I'm a mom, like I have 3 kids, so I'm trying to figure out what's best because I do work full time and
yeah. So I'll say from my experience, and this is the way that my understanding is that it's currently set up. I graduated, I guess, in 2017 with my master's in clinical mental health counseling from UTSA. And so I don't think they've changed too much since then, but they have it set up to where whenever you first start out, you're taking a lot of your introductory coursework. You're taking your introduction to clinical mental health counseling class. You can be taking your assessment, your DSM or your diagnosis class. You'll take a lot of like the textbook courses, your counseling theories course. Learning about all these different flavors of counseling and seeing which one maps on to you and your own experiences and how you are as a person too. And so a lot of the beginning coursework is really focused on the theory, the actual concept behind counseling. Well, what is a counselor versus a social worker versus a psychologist? And, what are the strengths that they all have, but also what makes counseling unique within that experience too. So a lot of like your theory-based courses will be within your first year or so. After that, you'll start your practicum experience. And in your practicum experience, you get to see clients from the community at the Sarabia Family Counseling Center. And so while you're in that experience, you have a doctoral student supervisor. You also have a professor who is in charge of your internship course. or I'm sorry, your practicum course, and you receive supervision from them as well. And so you have multiple levels of support, multiple levels of supervision. And they design it that way, as do most counseling programs, because we recognize that it's scary the first time you sit across from someone. There are some people too that go in and they're like, you know what? I got this theory down. I've been doing this theory my whole life. And you know what? I can rock and roll this counseling session. And then a client comes in and it doesn't fit with that person, doesn't fit within that theory, or that person's set of circumstances are way different than anything that you ever thought. And so it's like, oh, okay, we're here, we're getting ready to do this, and I don't know which way's up. It can kind of be a humbling experience too for some people. And so you have multiple levels of support for a reason. You also have the people that you're in your practicum course with as well, and who are also sources of support for you too. And so after you finish up your hour requirements for your practicum course, you go on for your internship courses. And internship courses are usually set up with organizations throughout the community. I did some of my internship experiences with Catholic Charities Counseling Services, La Paz, as well. And also, I spent about a year working with BCFS. And BCFS, I worked with individuals who are part of the foster care system or have aged out of the foster care system. So these are actual real world experiences that you get to have for yourself, support those people who are experiencing those circumstances, and then bring it back to the class and share generic details about those that helps to support each other. Because if someone's working with San Antonio State Hospital, if they're working at one of the inpatient facilities, they're doing their internship experience there, that's going to be very different than someone who's working at a nonprofit like myself. And so you get to build from each other's experiences too. Um, I'll share too that one thing that is difficult about those later end courses where you're in the actual work part of them is that it does become difficult for many people to manage, if you have to work full time, because you're working full time or part time, you're taking at least 20 hours or you're seeing 20 hours of client counseling experiences. And then also trying to manage your own coursework. So it does become difficult, but it is doable. And so I just want to be transparent with y'all about that. It was hard work for me whenever I was going through it, but it's possible too. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help if you're in some of those experiences. If you're like, hey, I'm doing the best that I can. You have these requirements. I know that you have a tape script or this assignment or something else like that. Talk to your professors. Again, they're counselors too, so they get, life happens. And many of them, especially if you are talking to them, are willing to help you out too. So it's not impossible. It can definitely be done, but there are hurdles that you'll have to go through for that. Did that kind of answer some of your questions, Ashley?
Yeah, kind of just wanted like I guess like pros and cons and what you can do with an LPC versus, the other programs and stuff like that.
Yeah. So with an LPC too, there's a lot of, there's a lot of whatever you want to do with it. If you want to go into a school-based setting, you can do that. If you want to work for an organization, you can definitely do that as well. If you want to work after you get your full LPC, if you want to open up shop and have people come see Ashley for counseling, you can definitely do that. And that particular take, so whatever population you want to work with, you have that luxury as well. Part of our counseling code of ethics, though, is that we don't turn people away just because they don't fit within our niche. So part of our ethical mandate is that we have to actually challenge ourselves, be transparent about our experiences, but also seek supervision if we need to. So seeking support from an LPC supervisor. If there's a new client who comes through the door, doing your own reading and research. These are all things that we are ethically mandated to do. If there's someone outside of what we usually see, we can't just refer them out because of that. And so because of that aspect, there's really a lot of variation within your training that you'll receive to where you can address client needs from various different lifestyle stages, circumstances, identities. all these different pieces that make up a person. You get a lot of support and a lot of training in KCREP accredited counseling programs for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Elena, you noticed you said when you were doing your master's, you worked with mental health as a mental health technician. Could you go into more depth about the job and what you did? Yeah, so as a mental health technician, what my primary role was to make sure that people are safe on the unit. And so the unit that I worked on and the unit that I really loved was what was in some hospitals is called the psychiatric intensive care unit. So this is working with individuals with schizophrenia, with bipolar disorder, with various degrees of what's known as more severe mental illness. Not always being able to tell what the difference is between reality and hallucinations or delusional thoughts or experiences. And so I really enjoyed that unit a lot. And part of it was because every day I walk on the unit, I never knew what I was going to get. Each day was brand new, it was unique. And one thing that I would always do is show a genuine care for the people that I'm working with. And that genuine care could be greeting a person by name. That genuine care would be talking to them about how's your day going? What's going on today? Just because someone has a diagnosis of some form of mental illness does not mean that they're defined by that. In fact, even individuals with schizophrenia will have moments of clarity where they aren't seeing hallucinations. They aren't responding to fears of the FBI's watching them or things like that. They're people too. And so that was something that I got to see firsthand very frequently and really was an amazing experience for me. And I really hope that I was able to be support for them as well as they, worked with their mental health needs and goals at that same time. But in my particular role, some of what the day-to-day tasks looked like is that I would intervene if there was an escalation, meaning that people were starting to get verbally, going at each other, or even physical. That was part of it at times. But I will say too, I actually took a lot of pride in the fact that in my time working with San Antonio State Hospital, I never actually got to the point where I needed to physically intervene with someone. And the reason why that was the case is because I had good rapport. I would work with people, I would talk with people. If I noticed that, hey, this person doesn't like this person, I would do my best to have a conversation with one on the other side of the room to where they're not getting in each other's space all the time. Just getting to know the people there and figuring out what they like, what they don't like, and treating them like people. Because at the end of the day, they are people too. That was something that I really gained a lot. And that's where I got to really bring in, even though I wasn't practicing counseling at the time, I got to bring in my own counseling skills and experience too, to where again, I'm not just reading it in a textbook. I'm learning about this. I'm putting into practice what I know, but also just being a genuine human being too. Not trying to go in and be afraid of people because, they might be what's called shadow boxing, where they're just fighting something in the hall. I'll just say, oh, hey, so and so, how's it going? And, believe it or not, just by engaging, oftentimes can help take them out of that moment where they're not responding to that hallucination anymore, or that delusional experience. They're able to break that and focus on talking to you, and that helps them as well. So that's some of the experience that I had. I also worked on detox units as well, where individuals are withdrawing from chemical substances. And so, believe it or not, even within that unit, there's also individuals that are responding to stimuli because they're detoxing from the substance. And so sometimes people will actually experience hallucinations as part of that process as well. But my day-to-day job was just to keep track of people and try to keep everyone calm. That was kind of the gist of it. Let's see. Can you have your own practice with a clinical mental health counseling degree? Absolutely. What differentiates between that is that if you have an LPC, which means that you're a fully independently licensed professional counselor, you can have your own private practice. Absolutely. Now, if you are under someone else's supervision, because whenever you graduate, if you're pursuing your LPC like I am right now in Mississippi, I'm under someone else's supervision. So I can't just open up shop as me, Michael Russo, even after I get my doctoral degree if I don't have my full LPC. So those hour requirements vary by state. In Texas, it's 3,000 hours. So that's not only face to face, but that's also time that you're taking working on notes, things like that about clients. So you're keeping track of all the administrative duties as well. That also will count towards your licensure too, but you have to have a certain number where you are working individually or in a group with someone too. One of the things that in psychiatric hospitals is very common is doing a lot of group work. You have a large number of people, you have sometimes the whole unit in one room, and you're facilitating a counseling group. That also counts for time as well towards your licensure. But once you get your full licensure, meaning that you're no longer provisionally licensed, then you can definitely go on and open up your own private practice with a counseling degree. Question about, did I take a break between bachelor's and master's? So as soon as I finished, I actually went straight on to the master's program. The same thing with, well, there's actually 1 semester gap between the time that I graduated with my master's and the time that I started in the doctoral program. And, again, this is just own personal preference for that level. Because of the fact that, it depends on what you want to do. Myself, I really want to be a counselor educator. And whenever I finish up my dissertation this semester, I'll be a counselor educator. And so I ended up, still kind of taking a pause, or not really doing the full licensure after master's degree, like some people will do. Both are great options. It just depends on what you want to do. One of the things that I think some of the reason why I decided to jump straight from my bachelor's to my master's degree, to be honest, some of it was fear. It was fear that, okay, I'm not going to be able to get a job. And there are jobs out there with people with their bachelor's degree in psychology. You can work in psychiatric hospitals, like I was sharing. You can really do a lot of different things with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And if you have more questions about those, talk to Dr. MC, talk with your professors, ask them about their thoughts about what you can do with a bachelor's degree. In the past, whenever I was Psych Club president, I think Dr. MC would even do talks every once in a while on what can I do with a bachelor's degree in psychology. There's a lot. But even still, I still ended up going right on into it, into my master's program. But that was just, I think, some of my own preference and my own fear too. So that was my experience. Let's see, any tips on how to build relationships with professors? Yeah, so this is a really, really good question. So I thank you for asking this. One, your professor is a person too. They can be scary. They can be assigning you grades. They can be, assigning you assignments too. But don't be afraid to just not stop by if they have virtual hours for Zoom. Stop by to those. Whether you have questions about the material or you don't, go by and talk to your professor. And I say that for a few reasons. One, whenever they go to assign your final grade, if you might be on that cutoff edge, some professors might actually bump you up a little bit if you come by and you talk to them, because it shows to them that you actually care about the material and you care about your success in your future. Now, if you're looking at professors in terms of applying for programs, one of the tricks that I used personally, and I call it a trick, but it was just also part of my genuine interest, was I would look up what they're researching. So if they are if they specialize with a particular population. So for example, I'll use myself. Some of the areas that I'll talk your ear off about is if you get me talking about neurofeedback. If you have questions about neurofeedback, I'll talk your ear off about that stuff. I love neurofeedback. I love the integration of neuroscience within counseling. I kind of was talking about that a little bit, so I'll step back from that. I also love really just genuinely being of support to people too. And so some of my work is around wellness as well. But I also like working with crisis. So suicide intervention is something that I love talking about as well. That can be a scary topic for some people. And I'd say for everyone, who am I kidding? Suicide is a scary topic. Um, but whenever you talk more about it, it becomes less stigmatizing because suicidal thoughts are very common. Many people experience those. It doesn't make you abnormal. In fact, most people at some point in their life do have thoughts about suicide. And I think that talking about those, helps to release some of that burden for the person. But from a research side, it helps to advocate for more opportunities for people. So, whether that's advocating for, support with inpatient hospitalization, whether that's advocating for support on, whatever it is, there's various levels of crisis. And just because someone experiences a crisis, does not mean that they automatically get sent to the hospital either. And so I very much have a strong passion for work around suicide as well in crisis. Given my clinical background and experience, I also love working with foster individuals who are in the foster care system or are currently in the foster care system. I'll talk your ear off about that too. But all these things, if you look at my curriculum vitae, my CV, I actually have a section on there that says research interests, and it labels them out into different categories: anxiety, things like that. These are all things that I talk about, and these are all things that are brought into the courses that I teach, but they're also brought into my own clinical practice and everything as well. So if you're looking to build a relationship with a faculty member, look at their CV. Many universities will post them. Look at what they're researching. If they have published recently, what has that research been about? Um, what are they currently working on? What is their experience with grant writing? Do they have the ability to support students through grants? Meaning, can you get paid if you came to that university too? Just kind of getting a sense of who they are too. Many within counseling, you'll find, are people first. And again, I think that some of that comes from our training and our experience within wellness-based counseling. It's about looking at the person for who they are in the different capacities. So, your social, your spiritual, your physical health, all these different areas that make up wellness. So I think that that's an opportunity to get a sense of who they are too. Are they taking care of themselves? I mean, I wouldn't flat out ask that question, but I mean, if they're willing to talk to you, I think that that's always a great thing. So just kind of making that initial, hey, I'm interested in your program. I see that you're interested in this, this, and this. I'm also really curious about that. That can be a really great setup for an email or a phone call or something like that. Or if you have the opportunity to go by an office and knock during office hours or something like that. Just kind of making efforts to put yourself out there is something that not many people will do, but it goes a long way. I hope that helps out, Alejandra. Let's see. Oh, make sure you sign in. Sorry, I'm going in order for all these. Let's see. Oh, did I run out of time? Yeah, I ran out of time a little bit. It looks like. I apologize. Like I said, I'll talk your ear off. If y'all have questions, I'll go ahead and drop my email in the chat if there's anything else. Personally, I'm happy to stick around too. I don't have anything going, so I'm happy to continue on. Let's see. There was another question too. Does UTSA offer the LPC? So I guess one thing, let me clarify a little bit. You get your degree, you get your master's degree, and then you apply for licensure. So the LPC is the licensed professional counselor. That's something that's awarded through the state of Texas, through every state in the United States. They all have their version of a licensed professional counseling. It's a license. Just like whenever you go to the DMV and you get your driver's license, this is also another form of a license. It doesn't require a high school diploma to get the driver's license, but it does for your LPC. You need your master's degree for your LPC in Texas, and in many states, I think every state for that matter, in order to practice as a counselor, you need your master's degree. So UTSA will offer your master's degree in either school counseling or clinical mental health counseling. Yes, I do have a LinkedIn as well. In fact, here, let me just do, let's see. I'm actually just going to share my email or my website with y'all because it has all of my contact information on there. And by the way, I'm not that egocentrical that I made my own website just for fun. I made this website because of the fact that I was applying for counselor education positions, and I wanted this as an opportunity to share with professionals, what is it that I'm working on professionally and everything. So I'm not just out there making my own website because, ooh, look at that Michael guy. He seems cool. No, no, no. So LPC and LMHC. So yeah, yes, depending on what state that you're in, this is another variation of the LPC. So the LMHC is a licensed mental health counselor. Some states have that in place of an LPC. There's also some states, I believe, I want to say North Carolina has an LPCC, that's a licensed professional clinical counselor. These are all similar language. It just varies based on each state. And they have, each state has their own requirements for licensure. But in general, what you're looking at is about 3,000 hours. You have to have your national counseling exam, which is that exam that gives you your NCC, like I was talking about a little bit earlier. And you have to have supervised experience, meaning that all these 3,000 hours you're doing under someone else's license. Texas is the LPC at this point in time, from what I understand, but also keep in mind, I'm in Mississippi now, so they might have changed things in the 3 years that I've been over here. I don't believe that they have. In fact, I know that they haven't because my wife is actually an LPC in Texas. And so she's a LPC in Texas and an LPC supervisor in Mississippi. She's not an LPC supervisor in Texas, though. So similar acronyms, just different states. I appreciate all of y'all being here tonight. If y'all do have questions, again, please feel free to reach out. Let me know how I can support you. Let me know what you need. If you have more questions, follow-up questions, let me know. I'm here to help y'all out. I get it.
Any last questions? Oh, one more.
So the length of time to get an LPC depends on how quickly you're actually accruing your hours, you're getting your hours. And also depends on what state. So for example, whenever I move up to Idaho this summer, I'll be able to actually earn my full LPC because they have a smaller number of hours than does Mississippi. I think that they only require 1,000 hours versus 3,000 hours here in Mississippi. So I've already accrued that experience. And so as long as the board's willing to accept my hours, which from what I understand they usually do, I'll be able to get my full LPC whenever I move up to Idaho this summer. And so it depends on how quickly you're actually getting your hours, where you're at. Because of the time frame, many people, whenever they graduate with their master's degree, they'll choose to go into a facility like a psychiatric hospital or a place where there's constantly patients at, a residential treatment facility as well, working with individuals, adolescents who are experiencing substance use disorders. Someplace where there's constantly a flow of people, because every day you walk in, you're going to get direct hours. If you're out in private practice trying to work under someone else's licensure to see clients, you got to hope that 1 hour time frame that you booked with that client, that they're actually coming in, that they don't have some type of circumstance come up where they can't make it to your counseling session that day. And so if you are solely getting your hours through that type of an environment, it will likely take a little bit longer to get the LPC. Great questions, everyone. Like I said, if y'all have any more, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk. Happy to set up a phone call with y'all too. Whatever works best for y'all. Let me know. Thank you all for coming out. It's really awesome again to see everything that Student Psychology Association's doing. Kudos to y'all. Kudos to the officers. Y'all are doing an amazing job. It was great to see everyone. And keep up the great work, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was an awesome discussion.
Oh yeah, I learned a lot.
Me too. Me too.
Good. I'm happy. Yeah.
Okay, and I did save the chat, so I will send his contact information through the Rowdy link email. So Elena will send it actually. Okay, and then once again, don't forget to sign out, and this will be posted on YouTube by Friday. Okay, if y'all do have any questions for him, y'all can reach out to him. If y'all have any questions for me in regards to the organization, you can send me a direct message. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.